I want to get us started, even if some folks are still coming in. I want to introduce our guest today. Today we have Dr. Medina, Melissa Medina, who is a pharmacy educator. And part of Melissa's job is teaching pharmacists how to teach college students. Dr. Medina has been active as a researcher, serving as an author and co-author for nearly 100 peer-reviewed journal publications, most focusing on pharmacy student learning and health professional education. And so we're very fortunate to have her here today, sharing her expertise with us and talking about making the transition from scholarly teaching to SOTL. So welcome, Dr. Medina.
Thank you so much for having me. I really am honored by the invitation, and I'm really excited to talk to all of you today. So thank you for that introduction. And I just hope we can get started, have a fun day to talk about scholarship and teaching and how you balance all of that as a faculty member. So let's get started. To be
Melissa,
honest,
would you give me just a second? My sound is coming from the wrong place, and I want to make sure that folks can hear you really well in the room.
Okie doke.
I would select Samsung as a speaker.
Can you say something one more time?
Sure. So I have 4 objectives for us today. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine now.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. So I have 4 objectives for our time together. And when I am addressing an objective, I'll have it in the top left corner. So you'll know that we're addressing each of these things. I'll call attention to them. But to really help us move forward, I divided our time together into 4 main areas. So we'll talk about the scholarship of teaching and learning. We're going to talk about educational research, and we're going to really just start out with the framework of scholarly teaching, and then talk about some scholarship of teaching and learning and educational research dues. So I hope that this is what you guys are looking for to help you today. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself with all these little images here. So I am from New Jersey. So I went to Rutgers University as an undergrad, and I also went there for graduate school. I got my doctorate at the Graduate School of Education. And then when I finished my doctorate, I moved to Oklahoma to work at the College of Pharmacy. So my initial job at the College of Pharmacy was director of instruction, and I was an assistant professor. So I started out like every faculty member. I had teaching, research, and service responsibilities. And I also had a center that I was directing. So the Office of Instruction and Assessment was what I was overseeing. And one of my main jobs was to teach our faculty how to teach. In our pharmacy accreditation standards, conducting active learning and conducting assessments about teaching and helping evaluate student learning and doing assessment about student learning is really important. It's a really big area of focus in our accreditation standards. And that was what I was responsible for. So I was responsible for starting a teaching evaluation program. And sort of unlike other peer evaluation teaching programs, I was the only person doing the peer evaluations. So to this day, I still do that. I have everyone on a schedule. So all of our assistant professors, for example, get observed every 2 years, all of our associate professors every 3 years, and all of our professors every 4 years. So I was doing that job for several years, and then I became the director of preparing future faculty, which is for our graduate students and postdoctoral fellows on our campus. We're at an academic health center. We have 7 professional colleges, and we have very few undergraduate programs at our campus. Our main campus at the University of Oklahoma is about 20 miles south of our campus in Norman, Oklahoma, and we're in Oklahoma City. So we don't have a lot of opportunities for graduate students and postdocs to learn how to teach and to decide, is that something that I want to do? Do I want to be a faculty member in the future? So Preparing Future Faculty is a national program. I don't know if you have that at the University of Florida at your undergrad campus. Do you have it there?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. So we have it at our campus, But again, it's a little bit more unusual because it's that program is typically conducted at undergraduate campuses, but because our health science center is separate, but certainly under the same umbrella of the University of Oklahoma, we have this program. It's in its 20th year, and we've had almost 200 graduates from that program. And we spend the fall semester where I teach them about teaching theory and some practical application, how to make a syllabus, how to manage students and conflicts in the classroom, how to interpret your exam statistics so you can revise your test questions for the future and vet questions from your test. So, and then in the spring semester, they go out to undergraduate universities in the state, and I go and observe them. So I was doing that. I also run I'm the director of our residency teaching certificate programs. So in pharmacy, we have a PGY1, a first year residency teaching certificate. It's foundational, just learning how to put a teaching lecture together. And then if we have residents that stay for a second year, they learn about course coordinating and precepting. So being out in the experiential setting. So I did those things for several years. I got promoted to professor, and then I was also promoted to the associate dean for assessment and evaluation. So I still do all those old jobs, but then I took on doing accreditation for our college. And then this past June, I actually became the dean. So now I think I've had every job at the college. I'm very proud to say. So if you ever want to talk about your career trajectory, please email me. Happy to talk to you about that. So I've been at OU for 25 years now. Some other interesting things that I do to help you get to know me a little bit better. I am an associate editor for the American Journal of Pharmaceutical Education. So that is the flagship journal for pharmacy education. And I have been doing that for almost 7 years. So as an associate editor, I get assigned a certain number of articles that come in. I send them out for peer review. And then when those peer reviews come back, I vet them to see what's going to go forward through publication. So I do my own peer review, I evaluate all the peer reviews, and then I send them back to the author for some revision. And we just work on that as a partnership. And then maybe one of the last areas of interest for pharmacy education, I chaired the committee in 2013 and 2022 to rewrite our national pharmacy education outcomes and entrustable professional activities. And those inform all of our accreditation standards. So really exciting opportunity to work in the Academy for Pharmacy to learn to help people learn how to look at program outcomes and sort of competency-based statements. So that's a little bit about who I am. And I'm just so honored to be here today with all of you. Like I said, I really appreciate the invitation. I wish I could have been there with you in person because it sounds like you have some delicious cookies. And I love delicious cookies. So to get started, when I received the invitation, I was asked to address a couple of items related to my path in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So one question I have is, how many of you in the room, you can raise your hand, publish this in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning? Have you sent in articles? Say, I see one hand, 2, 3, 4. Okay, a couple of hands. Okay, maybe a few more. So maybe a little bit more than half of you. For those of you that didn't raise your hand, how many of you are interested in publishing in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning? Anyone? Okay.
We got a couple.
Okay. Anyone just not sure where to get started? Okay.
One.
Okay. Perfect. So others, you feel confident how to get started?
Yeah.
No.
No, maybe.
It's best you covered. Yeah, we want you to go
So
deep.
go over the basics.
Okay.
Give us a 30,000-foot view. We need it.
Okay. So I've prepared some slides to keep me honest, and I'm gonna go in depth, but I certainly I've saved some time for us to talk about things as well. So one question, I figured I'd start with a couple of questions that I received in the guidance for putting the talk together, but I also have some questions that I was sent that I saved for the end. So definitely lots of time for questions. So one question I received was, how do you develop ideas for various research questions or topics for review articles? So I do write a lot of review articles. And I just want to give you a little bit of background. So when I first started at the University of Oklahoma, I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but I told you I was an assistant professor and I also was starting a new service. So starting that teaching observation program, that peer observation program was brand new to our college. And honestly, it was very uncomfortable for people because they kind of thought of me as coming in to watch them as a punishment, that I was there to catch people doing things wrong instead of really my goal was to be a partner. And I had to spend a lot of time developing that service. So whether you have a clinical service or whether you're starting a service just in your own educational program, that was something that I was spending a lot of time doing. And as a result, I wasn't spending a lot of time writing about it because I was spending a lot of time creating it. And I found it difficult to actually write about it because I was too immersed in trying to get it off the ground. So I would say, and then I also had a child during that time early in my academic career. So I was really trying to figure out how to balance having an administrative role along with being a faculty member, especially a brand new faculty member, and then also being a new mom and living in a new state where my family, my husband's family and my family all live back in New Jersey. So we were really kind of navigating a lot of this independently. I'm just trying to build a new support network. I don't know if that resonates with anyone, but it certainly was a stressful time. Being a faculty member can be stressful. So to be completely honest with you, my first maybe 2 or 3 years, I did not publish a lot. I maybe published one article. And my department chair, when I would have my annual review, was pretty supportive and encouraging. But the reality is, as I was moving towards promotion, I really wasn't publishing, though, to the amount that I should have. So what was interesting and sort of fortuitous is as I got closer to promotion, I was at a professional meeting with one of my colleagues from my college eating lunch. And she asked me, how are things going for your promotion? And I said, they're not. I feel kind of stuck. I don't know how to get my publications off the ground. And she said, well, you really need to try something because you're not going to get promoted. So you probably have about 1 or 2 years that you really need to start getting some publications out. And she said, you just need to start small. And that was really helpful advice for me. I'm not sure how many people in the room are in pharmacy. Okay, so no one. So tell me this. Tell me what colleges you're from.
Business.
Business.
College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, basically
Liberal
teaching physics.
Okay.
Ag and life sciences.
Ag and life sciences.
Chemistry.
Okay.
Design construction plan,
Yes.
education,
Okay.
Health education.
Health education, and then
Writing program.
writing program, and then,
Okay.
so
Okay.
like all over. all
Yeah,
over.
lots of diversity. Okay, so this is good. So in pharmacy education, we have lots of different pharmacy journals for pharmacy practice and for pharmacy education. And there's one journal in particular that they have a section, they have an article category that looks at helping new faculty transition and helping new pharmacists transition into pharmacist roles or teaching roles or precepting experiential students roles, sort of like teacher in service. When your students go out to learn about teaching, pharmacists do the same thing. Pharmacy students do the same thing. So there's a really great article category in that journal, and it's only 2,000 words, and it has literature review in there. And she encouraged me to publish in that particular article category, and it was a really great way for me to get started. The other thing that I started doing was serving as a peer reviewer for journal articles for the AJPE, which I'm an associate editor for now. And that really did help me feel more confident. It helped me grow my confidence in doing scholarly work because at that point, I just didn't feel that confident. I had a big research background when I was at Rutgers. I worked as a clinical research coordinator. I worked as a bench scientist in my undergraduate days as a neuroscience researcher. I did lots of research when I was in the Graduate School of Education. But just bringing those projects through publication, I wasn't always the lead author on those or the primary investigator. So I didn't really have a lot of confidence. But serving as a peer reviewer and starting out with that small article category really did help build my confidence. So that's just a little bit of background for me. I would say now the way that I develop ideas for various research questions really stems from questions that I receive as a faculty member. So being really involved in pharmacy education, I have people email me all the time different questions about curriculum or about assessment or about our program outcomes. And the way that I have looked at it is I have a full-time job trying to support my faculty, and I also do these other jobs. So I don't have a lot of extra time in the day. And typically it's not just one person asking me that question. Oftentimes it's many people asking me the question. And I feel like an easy way to provide that outreach is to publish those types of articles. So I oftentimes turn those questions into articles, whether that's a review article or a study that I'm going to conduct. That is how I come up with my research questions. It's just generally questions that other people ask me or questions that I have that I need to answer for our college. Oftentimes I just recognize that if I have this question, probably other people do. And what if we publish it in the literature and I can get the conversation started? Because certainly I love contributing ideas to the literature and I love hearing people's responses to it or how they interpret what I'm doing research on. So I really get my ideas from there. And then also serving as an associate editor, I see articles all the time. I probably have about 20 articles a month that I'm responsible for at any given time. Articles are coming in and out of my queue. And I have to read all those articles. So I often get a lot of inspiration from those articles as well when they talk about next steps in their article. Sometimes it gives me some food for thought. So I don't know if that helps you. Does that resonate with anyone? Do you get your ideas from questions that people ask you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the way that I select the ideas that will most likely be successful to see through publication or presentation is that I just, again, look at those questions that I receive and I just do some literature searches. And I really try to see what is out there in the literature and what am I filling? What gap am I actually filling? That's a big thing I offer advice on to my authors when they are submitting their articles to me is many times that's really missing from the article is how their article is filling a need in the literature or how their study is filling a need in the literature. I think that really has to be explicit. So I try to do a lot of literature search to make sure that that is very explicit and transparent when I write my articles. And then the third question I received is how do I involve co-authors, so faculty, students, residents in the scholarship of teaching and learning? So in pharmacy education, I told you we have an organization called the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy, and that's our pharmacy education organization that works very closely with our accreditors. And they have different special interest groups. And one of their special interest groups is an assessment special interest group. And every year at our annual meeting, we get together and people bring research ideas and they ask for collaborators. So for me, this is a really great opportunity where I don't have to come up with the idea. I just have to help support people in the data collection and the writing, the interpretation of the results, the analysis of the results, and then the writing of that. So I love working with other people from across the country. I do some work with colleagues at your institution, and I really find that very rewarding. I learn a lot from them, and it's a great collaborative effort. Also, since I'm the residency teaching certificate director, I have many pharmacy residents that are interested in becoming faculty members. And if they're interested in that, I offer them the opportunity to write an article with me. And when we try to decide what we should talk about, I tell them the same thing. Tell me a question that you have where you're at in your journey right now. What's really a pressing question for you? And let's see if we can turn it into a research article, study, or into a review article. So I do that. And I also offer a 1 month long rotation for pharmacy students that are senior level students in their 4th year, where they go out to different pharmacy settings and practice. They can come with me and learn about academia and what it's like to be a dean. And when they do that, I offer them the same opportunity. Do you want to write an article with me? What questions do you have? Let's work on that topic and see if we can turn it into a study. So that's how I involve other people. Again, working with different colleagues. I just like mentoring people. At my college, people will come to me with ideas and ask me to help them refine those ideas. And I don't always serve on their article or on their manuscript. I may just offer them some advice, which I really like to do. So I just love helping people. And that really helps me want to be a collaborator with other people. And then that sort of helps me address this last question. What inspires me to continue to engage in the scholarship of teaching and learning, to complete all the ideas I have brewing? And I would say that really can be hard. I don't know about any of you. Do all of you feel like you're really balancing your tripartite mission of teaching, research, and service like it's a piece of cake for you? It's pretty easy. Everyone.
Master jugglers, all of us.
Yes. Master jugglers. So I understand that. I have a lot of different responsibilities as the dean, and I've only been the executive dean for about 6 months now. And the reality is I still have some of my old job as the associate dean for assessment. I'm still the director of preparing future faculty. I still deliver our teaching certificate programs. I still have a pretty heavy course load that I teach in. And I'm still the associate editor for a journal, and I still am doing my own studies. Like it's hard to do it's hard to balance all those things. I feel like day and night I'm kind of doing work, but I'm really driven by wanting to help people. That's really important to me. And I think one thing that really helped motivate me to continue that balance is that 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And I had to do chemo and surgery and radiation for a little bit over a year. And then when I finished that treatment, I developed a second cancer. And then I had treatment again for another year. And during that time, I really thought a lot about my legacy and what did I want people to remember me for, given my health circumstance. And since I spend so much time teaching people how to teach, I had so many ideas in my head, I really wanted to spend time getting all those ideas out. Now, luckily, I'm a 10-year survivor, so I'm very fortunate to still be here. But that passion to help share the ideas that I have with other people and sort of leave my legacy really has motivated me. So that really helps inspire me. That's sort of my why. I just love sharing that, just the areas that I work on and helping other people do their jobs better or find more fulfillment in their job or just make their job easier. So just rooting it in wanting to help people and wanting to have a legacy that, that's really important to me. So I hope that helps give you some insights. I don't know if any of you can relate to any of those things.
She can hear you, so you guys can jump in the conversation.
Okay, so now that I've answered those couple of questions, I thought I would go through and talk about moving from scholarly teaching to educational research. This is one way I kind of balance. I think about what publication means and what does it mean to fulfill the research arm and the scholarship arm of the tripartite mission. So when I think about this particular continuum, I start with scholarly teaching. So several years ago, maybe 2016, in our academy in pharmacy education, I was asked to write an article and do a collaborative type of publication with people defining what does teaching excellence mean? What does that actually look like? And what our committee looked at was scholarly teaching, that we need to ground teaching excellence in scholarly teaching. So when with our committee, what we really looked at was work from Lee Shulman out of the Carnegie Foundation, past president of Carnegie Foundation. So an older article, but really kind of stands true. He talked about scholarly teaching as being two types of knowledge. So having content knowledge, knowledge of your subject area, and then having pedagogical knowledge. So really knowing your discipline, content knowledge, knowing how to teach other people about your discipline, pedagogical knowledge. So including things like, how do you simplify content for other people to understand? How do you motivate students or other learners about your content and help them get engaged in it? How do you help people remember your content? What are some strategies that you can use to help students remember? And this is really the backbone that I use for scholarly teaching definitions. Again, I didn't invent it, Lee Shulman did, but I find this to be very helpful when I think about teaching excellence. Because in the tripartite mission of teaching, research, and service, you have to be able to demonstrate how you're an excellent teacher. And the reality is that historically, people define teaching excellence by the number of courses they teach, the number of years of service that they have, and their course evaluations. And we know that excellent teaching is a lot more than that. Yes, maybe teaching a lot does help you build your excellence. Maybe the longer you've been here, the more expertise you have, because certainly when we remember K. Anders Ericsson, and the nature of expertise, 10 years, 10,000 hours. But the reality is that knowing how to teach in your discipline is really just a cornerstone to scholarly teaching. And what I like about this particular foundation of content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge comes from Glassick and colleagues looking at scholarship assessed. So when we think about the different types of scholarship that exist, like the scholarship of discovery, the scholarship of integration, scholarship of application, and then the scholarship of teaching, there are 6 standards that Glassick and colleagues developed that really apply to all of those different types of scholarship that faculty engage in. So having clear goals, having adequate preparation, appropriate methods, significant results, effective presentation, and then reflective critique. I really love these because these are 6 objective ways to evaluate your scholarly teaching. And we can do that for any kind of scholarly efforts that you're engaging in, including scholarly teaching. So I wanted to provide you an example of how I look at this. So I've actually made rubrics for all 6 of these particular areas so that faculty that want to evaluate themselves and their efforts related to scholarly teaching can use these particular rubrics. I have those published in the literature. So do you have clear goals? So for example, in your teaching, do you use objectives? They're absolutely foundational to your teaching. Adequate preparation. So when we think about that pedagogical knowledge, do you search the literature to look at what are other people in your discipline doing to teach their learners? And what evidence do they have that that type of strategy is useful? Does it produce great outcomes? Are you able to describe who your learners are, what their backgrounds are, what is their prior knowledge coming into your course? And then how are you there to help advance their knowledge to prepare them for the next set of coursework, either in your program or in an academic major, or even just in your own course? Then appropriate methods. Are you using evidence-based strategies? Are you having significant results? So can you demonstrate alignment? Can you show that your objectives and the delivery of your content and your assessments are all triangulated and aligned? So if you have low-level objectives, do you do more direct instruction? And then do you have more multiple choice kind of low-level test questions, for example? Do you use rubrics in your teaching and assessment? And are those rubrics validated? Are the psychometric properties of those rubrics established? Then effective presentation. Are you presenting your outcomes to your colleagues? Certainly in pharmacy, we're in a lockstep curriculum. So all of our content builds upon each other. So it's really essential for my faculty in the College of Pharmacy to talk to each other, because we're helping students get to an endpoint, and we're all responsible for how students look at the end. And our coursework has to be really integrated, even though it's really easy in pharmacy and any discipline to have each course be a silo. And we don't think about the other courses necessarily that we're related to. We just think about our course. So having effective presentation can really look at helping you share your results of your coursework and what you're doing and what students are struggling with and what they're succeeding at. How are they moving through your courses, and can you help your other colleagues understand that? Because then maybe colleagues that come before you that are the prerequisite information for your course can help maybe provide some more foundational information. Maybe colleagues and courses that come after you, they're trying to advance students, and maybe you need to do some more things in your course to help prepare students for future coursework. And then reflective critique, being a critically reflective teacher, really very important. Brookfield in the literature talks about being a critically reflective teacher. So looking at your course evaluations, doing self-reflection, having peer review of your teaching, consulting the literature, those are all things that help support really being a critically reflective teacher. So being able to demonstrate this in times of promotion, really very helpful. If you want to demonstrate that you are an excellent teacher going up for promotion, whether assistant to associate or associate to professor, this is one framework that you can use. And I believe that all faculty are really capable of demonstrating their abilities as a scholarly teacher, and they should be held accountable to this, that this is the way to demonstrate teaching excellence. Goes way beyond the number of courses you teach or your course evaluations, just a little number. Instead, it offers a more complete picture. So I hope that this first step in the continuum is clear. Now what I want to do is show how we move and transition into the scholarship of teaching and learning. So there's 3 requirements for the scholarship of teaching and learning. I'm coming back to Lee Schulman from the Carnegie Foundation, and Pat Hutchins worked on the scholarship of teaching and learning. And what they really talk about in their literature is taking scholarly teaching and transitioning it to the scholarship of teaching and learning. And the way to do that is to use these 3 particular steps. So there are 3 requirements for the scholarship of teaching and learning. Is your teaching publicly disseminated? So are you making it public? Are you opening it to peer review? And are you presenting it in a form that others can build on? So this is really a way, are you sharing what you're doing with your colleagues and inviting peer review? Now, this may be done at your institution, in your department, or in your college, that you're sharing this work with other people. That, I think, is a start to the scholarship of teaching and learning. But really, the true mark of this type of peer review and public type of forum is disseminating that in the literature. And I have some examples for you of how I have done this over the years. So one is in pharmacy education, we like to use team-based learning. It's rooted in problem-based learning. And team-based learning back in 2008 really was something that just medical schools were doing. Colleges of pharmacy, this wasn't really a very popular type of teaching strategy because it was newer and not a lot of people knew it. I'm not sure how many of you have used problem-based learning in the past, but problem-based learning is pretty labor intensive because for every small group of students, you have to have a faculty facilitator. And that's really labor intensive if you have more than 20 students, because you're going to need several faculty to oversee those groups. Team-based learning takes problem-based learning, but allows to have less facilitators, essentially, is how it's used oftentimes in pharmacy education. So we did the scholarship of teaching and learning at our college by tracking our outcomes in our team-based learning courses in an endocrinology module. And we had 2 campuses at the time. And we evaluated the literature to see what were people doing in medicine, what were their outcomes. We compared our course, the new course of team-based learning, to more traditional type of lecture. We documented our outcomes over 5 years, and then we published that in the literature and actually won a teaching award for the work that we did. So this was just our effort in making, going back to these 3 requirements. Is it public? Is it peer reviewed? And is it a platform that others can build upon? So having it out in the literature, people were able to say, well, here's what they did at Oklahoma. Are we able to replicate that? Or can we modify it in some way to fit our own needs? And how can we build upon that? So this is just one example that I have related to scholarship of teaching and learning. I also have some different examples that I thought I would share with you on how I engage in the scholarship of teaching and learning. And if I probably can offer you any advice, I want to sort of give you a spoiler alert for one of my scholarship of teaching and learning dues, is that not all of your publications need to be educational research articles, which I'm going to talk about in a second. You don't need to be doing 20 research studies a year. At the University of Oklahoma, engaging in the scholarship of teaching and learning is something that is rewarded at our university and encouraged. They want faculty. This is considered a form of scholarship related to the tripartite mission. So doing things like review articles or publishing outcomes of your own coursework that may not count as an educational research study, but it's still the scholarship of teaching and learning. These are things that do get rewarded in our promotion and or tenure system. So one example I have is a longitudinal study where we tracked outcomes of that academic rotation that I told you I offer. We tracked those outcomes for over 10 years and looked at people's first position after graduation and their residency. And then we gave long-term follow-up questions. So we do lots of teaching about teaching on our academic rotation. And we went back and asked all of the participants of that program to take some knowledge assessments to see what they remembered and did some comparing and contrasting for that. A second article that we have is looking at a career skills assessment in our program. So looking at their students' ability to do, we offer a professional skills workshop, a career skills workshop to our students. We have done that for over 25 years, and we captured those outcomes after about 15 years of data collection. And I'm not saying scholarship of teaching and learning needs to be that longitudinal, 10 or 15 years, but in some of these instances, our sample size was a little bit smaller, like the rotation, so we did data collect for longer. But certainly I have seen scholarship of teaching and learning examples where people are data collecting about their courses maybe for 3 years, for example. So more than 1 year, but certainly it doesn't need to be 10 or 20 years. Some other areas of scholarship of teaching and learning that we encourage in our academy, and these are article categories in the American Journal of Pharmaceutical Education. Some are commentaries, and these are our call to action in our academy. And these are really the type of articles that I just love to write, these particular articles, because these address questions that I get from other people in the academy. So I really love to do this. I collaborate with other people on these examples. So for example, exploring impact metrics beyond indices and citations for the scholarship of teaching and learning. So I really love this particular article because, and this commentary, because certainly when we look at traditional types of research, we look at the impact factor as one example of a metric to say what the quality of your publication is. But in the scholarship of teaching and learning, oftentimes you may be contributing to the professional development of your colleagues, but they're using your work in their classroom, and that's not being cited necessarily in a public way, but it's still making a really big impact. And those people may not be making research studies and citing the literature, but still, does it mean that your content isn't valuable of what you're contributing in the literature? So we wanted to have a call to action to have people just consider that. What is a contribution from the scholarship of teaching and learning? Also just making students thinking visible during active learning. That was another call to action we have. And then the importance of onboarding of new faculty members. How do we help welcome new faculty members into our academy? It's more than just onboarding. We need to do some pre-boarding and really focus on orientation as well. So these are just some of the examples that I have for the scholarship of teaching and learning. So hopefully they help you. Also some review articles that I have out in literature related to critical thinking, related to metacognition, and also related to course evaluations, so student ratings of instruction. So I would encourage you to think for yourself, are there examples of scholarly teaching that you could personally turn into the scholarship of teaching and learning? Is there anything that you feel like you're being a scholarly teacher, you're really developing something new in your course? And do you think it would be worthwhile to share that with other people? So moving it into those 3 requirements: public, peer-reviewed, platform others can build on. So think about those ideas.
One thing that I could think of is definitely incorporating AI in giving student feedback and personalized tutoring. I think that's like the hottest topic, and very few people have written about it, at least in my field.
And tell me what field you're in.
I'm in stage management in the School of Theater and Dance.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I need to get you in touch with my son. So my son is a sophomore at the University of Nebraska, and he is computer science engineering and applied math, and he is looking at AI to give sort of metacognitive prompts to students when they're writing code that doesn't just give them answers, but it actually helps teach them. And I agree with you 100% that there is not a lot of literature about this tool. And I think that that would be an excellent thing to write about. There is a big need in the academy to talk in all of higher education, to talk about how to use AI in a really facilitative way to help students learn better. And I love that particular example. So email me afterwards. I'll have to put you in touch with my son because he is doing a research study about that right now.
Thank you.
Hopefully other ideas start coming into your mind. While you're thinking of those, I'm going to transition you to our last section, which is educational research. And really the way that I distinguish scholarship of teaching and learning from educational research is that when you look in the literature about what educational research is, it really looks at more of a systematic design. So using an experimental design, systematic data collection, using control groups, this is what's going to distinguish educational research from the scholarship of teaching and learning. In pharmacy education at the University of Oklahoma, we don't have multiple sections of a course where I could do educational research. We only offer one section of a course and to 1 year of students. As a result, I'm not really able to do control groups. It makes it really difficult. So a lot of my research tends to fall more into the scholarship of teaching and learning. But some of you, it sounds like maybe teaching, for example, general bio or physics or chemistry or an educational psychology course where you're going to have multiple sections of a course. And you could do some comparing and contrasting and even some crossover designs. So this is really how I would define from the literature, share with you how to distinguish educational research from the scholarship of teaching and learning. You can have quantitative research, you can have qualitative research. Qualitative research is actually an area that I oversee for our journal. So I have all of the qualitative research studies come through my desk, and I sort of shepherd those. So 2 really great options, doing quantitative research or qualitative research. I really love doing both. And hopefully I can encourage all of you to think about both of those as options for yourself. I do have a couple of examples. Maybe I will pick maybe 2 to 3 educational research studies a year that I'm going to participate in. Now that I'm dean, I think it's going to go down maybe more to 1 or 2. I'm working on one right now about faculty workload. But one that I did that was really exciting that I really loved was the influence of case format on multiple choice question prompts. So when you're giving students when you're having students answer questions, should they be open-ended or multiple choice? And this is what my study looked at. I used an experimental design I compared 4 different classes of students to experts that have been practicing for more than 10 years. And I looked at their responses when they answered open-ended questions versus multiple choice questions to see which one generated better evidence. And what I found is that when people are given multiple choice question prompts, they actually generate better evidence because they're already given the conclusion. All they need to do is come up with the reasons. And in the absence of those conclusions, oftentimes people only offer conclusions when you're giving them an open-ended question, and they don't often tell you the reason why. And you can grade out those reasons why related to the type of evidence. Are you using guidelines? Are you using the literature? Or are you just using your opinion? So different types of evidence would be available. So this is just one example of educational research that I have done. I've also done some team-based learning types of studies where I have had control groups. I've compared 2 different classes to each other and I've done some crossover types of design. I've also participated in a national study about test anxiety on academic outcomes. This is, we used a validated psychometric properties established type of survey for students to look at their anxiety when they have to take our licensure exam. And then also just looking at, we have different surveys in our academy and just researching those and helping people understand some of the best practices that they could use. So these are just some of the examples. My last example, looking at some predictive studies, looking at student demographic variables, how they're going to perform on our licensure exam. That's really important for our accreditation. It's a quality indicator. We need our students to pass the licensure in order to practice. So that's a really important outcome for us. So these are just some examples of the different types of research that I have done, some validation studies, looking at inventories that are some rubrics that are already in the literature and validating those. So I hope that this framework has helped you think a little bit more about how you can fulfill the tripartite mission when it comes to scholarship and research, and how I have practiced personally in all 3 of these areas. And I hope that it does inspire you to think about how you can practice in these 3 areas. So from that, again, I would encourage you to sign up as a peer reviewer, look at your education journals or look at your professional journals. Our journal has a mentoring program, which I absolutely adore because it just helps demystify what it means to provide a good quality peer review that's going to help other people improve their scholarship and their educational research or their research studies. So I encourage you to be a peer reviewer. And I just want to end our time together talking to you about 10 do's that I would encourage you to do when it comes to scholarship. So 1 is address questions that you are asked. I hope that that is helpful for you and gives you some inspiration. Conduct a literature search and make sure that your study is fulfilling a gap in the literature. Like I told you, I have tons of articles that come into my queue, or I have lots of authors that will email me over the years. And oftentimes they have tried something that is new to them, but it's not new to the literature. So for example, if you're offering quizzes in your course in a learning management system, that's great. That's a great instructional strategy, but that is not new. Just because it's new to you doesn't mean that it's new to the literature and it's not necessarily addressing a gap. So it's absolutely essential that you do a literature search if you're going to transition your scholarly teaching efforts into the scholarship of teaching and learning and or educational research, because you have to explicitly say how your study is filling a gap. What is the so what of your study question? You have to make that absolutely transparent. I encourage people to assess longitudinally, and not just pre and post, but to also do a longitudinal follow-up at least 1 month later. If you look at the educational research, people's content knowledge, people's areas of knowledge doesn't transfer very easily to new settings. And really that makes it kind of difficult to study what the outcomes are of you teaching in different areas. So I like to do some follow-up studies to see what is the true longevity of the content that you're teaching people. Is it really making an impact? I encourage people to try to use control groups, at least if you're doing scholarship of teaching and learning. compare to previous years, but look at student demographic factors and try to control for some of those confounding variables. Maybe have one condition and let people have a crossover design. It can be kind of tricky to have that. I find many times when I have a new idea of an instructional strategy I want to use, I haven't always data collected on the previous course. So that can make executing scholarship of teaching and learning a little bit tricky. Make sure you have a representative sample. So try to have large numbers. If you can do multi-institutional studies, really very helpful. Otherwise, data collect for a few years to increase your sample size. If you're going to use surveys in your research, make sure they're validated surveys. Also, make sure that you have multiple areas that you're including, not just assessing student perceptions. So we have Kirkpatrick's hierarchy in the literature that talks about different types of knowledge assessments that can be done. And assessing students' perceptions and satisfaction is the lowest level. And in our journal, that is not enough. If that's all you've assessed, you're not going to be able to get published in our journal because it's too low level. You have to really look at actual outcomes of students' knowledge, skills, or attitudes. And then finally, make sure that your results are generalizable to other programs. So I hope that this advice has been helpful. I want to save some time for questions. I know we have several minutes left, so I want to take a pause and ask what questions you have.
You said top 10, I only see 9.
Oh, yes, the peer review was the previous one. The peer review, I'm sorry, I meant to number that as number 1. Serve as a peer reviewer is one of my top 10.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so could you speak a bit more about a validated survey? What if you don't find a validated survey for what you want to do? How
Oh,
do you
yeah,
go
great question.
about validating one? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. There are certainly, depending on what you want to study, there are a lot of validated surveys in the literature. So I do encourage you to do a literature search. For example, the AACU has these value rubrics, lots of rubrics that they have, like about critical thinking and problem solving, for example. But if you don't have a validated survey, you can create your own survey, but you need to work on validating it. And there are different steps. I'm happy to come back and share the steps of validating a survey with you, but in the future. But you can validate your own survey. You just need to make sure that you establish that. So looking at those psychometric properties. So if you're making your own survey, are you basing it on another survey that's in the literature? Or are you able to train other investigators, other colleagues on this survey, looking at inter-rater reliability, for example? But is the survey that you're addressing actually addressing what you think it's addressing? So some of that validity evidence. So you can establish your own if there's not one in the literature, but you just need to validate it.
Right. Thank you. That's very helpful. And I'd certainly be interested in knowing those procedures of how to validate something.
Yeah, yeah. I will
Yeah.
be happy to talk to you about that. Tell me what other questions.
You can just jump in and ask any question.
Yeah. I did receive some in advance. I'm happy to go to those. I wanted to give you time to ask. Maybe these questions will trigger some inspiration for questions. So one question I have is, how do you build flexibility into your institutional review board protocol, essentially, in case your question changes or evolves? And what I would say at the University of Oklahoma, I don't know how it is at the University of Florida. I imagine it's very similar, but our institutional review board is very, very, very strict, rightfully so. These people are my partners. I am very grateful for them, but they're very strict. And I am not able to really build a lot of flexibility into my protocols. So as a result, I need to do protocol modifications. I was just on the email with my IRB yesterday for a study that I have, and there are certain things that they want to see. I just need to work on addressing that because they're really there as your partner to protect you and the university. So you can't really build any flexibility into your protocol. You just need to do a protocol modification. So that's how I handle that one. I hope that helps. Do you see similar things with your IRB when you're doing your research studies?
There's a hand there, go ahead.
You can finish that.
Okay.
We actually have a new IRB that gets automatically approved for Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So it's really lovely, really quick process. You hear within moments whether you're approved or not. There isn't a modification process for it anymore, though. You do have to resubmit if you've changed your research design significantly.
Oh, okay. That's
But
wonderful.
A completely exempt process now. for
Oh
certain-
my gosh. That is incredible. That is really, you're very lucky because yesterday I was asked that I'm doing a study with graduates about their study habits for our licensure exam, and they want me to get HIPAA forms signed for my participants. So again, I'm at a health science center campus. I'm sure that some of you can relate to that. So they're used to more like oncology study types of protocols. Scholarship of Teaching and Learning is not necessarily what they're always seeing. So
Yeah,
your
so we have
topic sounds really great.
IRB2, so we have separate one for the Health Science Center versus main campus. And now we have this third process that kind of, it's like pre-programmed and walks you through a series of questions. And as long as none of those are red flags, you can kind of approve really quickly. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm sure minimal risk, confidentiality, those are great things. Well, that's
Yeah.
wonderful to hear.
Like maybe 20 questions. And like once you make it through that, you're good.
Oh,
And
wow.
educational research, as long as it's on higher education, not K-12 folks or
Yep.
special population, we're good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Removing some of these barriers that
Yes.
do these research of teaching and learning community.
That is wonderful. I think you need to write that up for the literature. So then I can cite it and send it to my IRB.
We'd be happy to demo it for you so that you can see kind of how that works.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm going to have you call my person. I'm going to have you be on a Zoom call with me and my IRB people.
I'm not. Yes.
We just have done this multiple times.
Yes.
And it's
And reassuring
so
them,
nice
build it up,
compared
yeah.
to what it used to be, so yeah.
Wow. I mean, I am so jealous. Like I am on round 6 of corrections for my IRB protocol and it's a national study. Like it is, I'm very, very jealous.
Melissa, we have one question from
I just want to preface it. How much are you familiar with the extension system?
Oh, tell me a little bit more about it.
It's associated with the land grant institutions, and it's supposed to link the public with the universities.
Okay, I'm a little bit familiar with that. Rutgers was a land grant institution and so is OU. Tell me your question.
So my question is that we have a lot of extension agents that are doing scholarly teaching, but are familiar with this SOTL process and trying to figure out how can we help them produce more SOTL research. Now, they have a wide variety of programs, a wide variety of settings, so kind of if you could elaborate on question number 3, is how can they turn the work that they do every day into SOTL research?
Okay, yeah, I think that's a great question. And I don't even know that is a question that's necessarily limited to extension campuses. It's just like anyone that's doing scholarly teaching, how do you help them transition to the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning? And the thing that I have found most successful is mentoring them. So, and serving as a collaborator. They may just need someone to help collaborate on a study to get the transition from scholarly teaching to the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And I find that can be a really great partnership, that if you work on a study together and work on a project together, that really can help train them for future studies. And it may actually open up a collaboration for you, that this may be a future collaborator, especially if you work well together with that particular person. So I have just found in those instances that people need a lot of mentoring with this because it's different than maybe more traditional research that people are familiar with. Like, for example, I have some colleagues that are excellent scientists. They publish in the scientific literature all the time, but then they want to do a SOTL study and they tell me they're only going to give the study to the top 10 students in the class. Like that's not generalizable. So mentoring them is helpful. I also, what works for me, I offer people, I will read their ideas. I don't have to necessarily collaborate with them. I can just offer mentoring. Send me your idea. I'll help you shape it. Send me a draft of your article. I'll read it and provide you feedback before you submit it to a journal. So mentoring, a mentoring program. We're starting a scholarship of teaching and learning certificate program for early career faculty, but it really be any faculty at OU. And we're going to teach people these fundamentals. So does that help? Meeting with people, hearing their ideas, encouraging them to actually do scholarship of teaching and learning, mentoring them, offering to collaborate with them.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
So can you talk a little more about the culture at your university relative to scholarship, teaching, learning, and promotion? And I mean, because you've got researchers in pharmacy, for example.
Yep.
You've got people teaching and the value of that. It sounds like it's valued pretty well through promotion. And the other thing I'll add here, we have a fair amount of non-tenure track instructional professors and stuff like that. So what are the ingredients for success or what are the challenges?
Well, it definitely, I think you're absolutely right. It is a culture of teaching and assessment that values scholarly teaching and the scholarship of teaching and learning. And our campus is very supportive of that, but it has taken time over the years. And just helping demonstrate to faculty, to administration, that scholarship of teaching and learning and educational research are considered viable forms of research, and they really are areas that people can be very innovative in, and sharing that with the academy or with higher education is really very important. So some of it is establishing buy-in with leadership, and then really trying to educate people, especially maybe more traditional scientists that don't understand scholarship of teaching and learning as much, or they don't understand the rigor of scholarship of teaching and learning and educational research. So just educating them in a positive way, and how we can use the literature to improve their teaching. So I find that my teaching evaluation service helps me do some of that. We also, prior to me serving as the dean, we had a dean that was very supportive of scholarship of teaching and learning in our college. And I think we just kind of started locally, like it was in our college, helping educate people about this option as a form of scholarship for promotion. And then having successful examples of people going up for promotion and or tenure and being successful in that with scholarship of teaching and learning examples in their portfolio. So start small and educate people.
To follow up on that, what kind of support do you provide to help faculty to do all these things? Because, we're all crazy busy and,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, excellent question. So one thing that we do at our college is we have a full-time biostatistician on staff, and he helps us with our accreditation standards and answering accreditation questions that we have. However, another part of his job is helping all of our faculty on their research studies. So all of our faculty, I wouldn't say they're required, but they're strongly encouraged to visit him when they are designing their study. And over the years, they learned that that is the best thing that they can do, is to go to him at the beginning in the design phase instead of coming to him in the analysis phase and then realizing that their data collection was incomplete and that the study data that they have is not viable. So we offer that support. He's really very helpful and asks excellent questions. He also oftentimes serves as a collaborator on many of those studies. For the results section, he'll analyze the results. So he's sort of one-stop shopping, and he really understands pharmacy education, just as an example. And he's just invaluable. So that is one really important form of support that we have at our college. And then certainly I spend a lot of time helping mentor people. And I feel like it's a little bit of train the trainer. I mentor other people who then start, other colleagues who then start mentoring other colleagues. So having collaborative type of practices for scholarship of teaching and learning, that really has helped. Doing it all together, supporting each other.
And do you have a formal mentorship program within your college?
For scholarship of teaching and learning?
Well, or just faculty in general?
I wouldn't say it's formal. I think it's an area of improvement for us. We have one of our departments, we have two departments. One of our departments formally assigns people to each other, but I would really like to improve that to make it more formalized. But no, right now I wouldn't say it's all that great. So some of it's just really trying to help each other and knowing that a rising tide lifts all ships. So when we all work together, we all can win. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Tell me what other questions.
Can you talk a little bit more about your question 5 there about instructional faculty and, you know, when your load is all instruction, how to integrate and balance in, if possible, that scholarship of teaching and learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would say is I would almost start with what I have at the beginning, at the end of the sentence. So what is your percent effort? So when we look at the tripartite mission, what is your percent effort for research, teaching versus service? So it sounds like as an instructional faculty with 4 courses, my guess is your percent effort for teaching is 50 to 70% is my guess, maybe higher. Would that be true?
No. For instructional faculty, it would be 100% teaching.
100% teaching. Are you eligible for promotion then?
We're eligible for promotion, but not tenure.
But not tenure. Yeah, sure. Well then, so you're 100% teaching, but if you're going up for promotion, you have to be able to demonstrate service and research, right?
Not research.
Not research.
Not research. So you don't have to demonstrate research.
No.
Okay. Well, then, so is there an expectation for you to publish on a yearly basis?
No.
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 Except maybe for master lecturer, perhaps, there may be, we're starting to move, I think, where you're seeing.
It wasn't previously, but it would make sense for there to be that, and the hopes that that would be, the hopes that that would be the trend, that that type of teaching practice would be an expectation of that level of teacher, of a master level. It wasn't in the past, but so if that's the case, getting that into this, you know, not only into the administrative system of the promotion packet, but also getting it into the practice.
Right.
Of that instructional faculty who are already at their 120%.
Right. Right. Like it's based on 100%. So to me, it sounds like an opportunity to address the structural framework for your promotion. If you're 100% teaching, that's what you're evaluated against. You're not, it doesn't sound, at least on paper, that should, it just, it seems hard. How are you going to be higher than that? That doesn't seem fair.
Well, no, I was joking about the 120%. What I was just saying is that we're all, you know, we're teaching thousands of students.
Yeah.
Each semester for our 100% effort. But we realize the importance of thinking critically about the practice of teaching.
That's right.
Evaluating what we're doing and doing innovation and showing and sharing those results with others. We value those principles.
Sure. Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I would say, so I really do base it off of percent effort, but what I would say then is when you're at a point where it's practically 100% effort, whatever's in your offer letter, irregardless, that start small. Number one, you don't need to publish 20 articles a year. Think about one thing that one project that you're really passionate about, and where could you carve out time? Knowing yourself, when are you most productive? Like, unfortunately for me, I'm very productive in the evening when it comes to my writing. Where are you most productive with your writing? When it comes to writing up your research studies. So you're doing your data collection in class. So that's already, you have to partner that and couple that in the coursework that you're actually delivering. But when are you going to write up the results? That's what I always find a hard time of, like, when am I going to have time to write up these things? You're already executing the class. So I find that I'm very productive at night, which means I don't sleep as much because it's just so, I have an easier time writing at night than I do during the day. But know that about yourself. Know that what is the time that you're able to do that. When my kids were younger, again, like, that hasn't really changed for me. I've always been a productive writer in the evening. So I would do writing at night. And I'm not a person, I was mentored once that you should write a little bit every day. That doesn't work for me because I need just bigger blocks of time because I need to get immersed in it. And writing for just an hour isn't enough for me. I usually need 2 or 3 hours. So I just find that pocket of time is at night, and really trying to schedule out your time, that I know I can do this on maybe Wednesday evenings for a couple of hours, if it's in the evening, or early in the morning. Some people like to get up early, and maybe writing every day would be useful for you. So that's one thing. Start with a small project and schedule out your time, put it on your calendar, and have yourself do that. I would also say I would think very smart about how you're spending your time in your class. And I would imagine teaching 4 classes with thousands of students. If you do anything else besides multiple choice exams, it's a really big grading burden. Does that happen to you? So you're having to grade essays or projects. Do you do those kind of things, or do you have multiple choice tests?
Most of these would be multiple choice.
Oh, good.
Because with the thousands of students, that would.
Yeah, it would be impossible, right? Okay, so that's good. So to me, it's setting realistic expectations and really trying to understand when are you a productive writer, and trying to carve out that time for yourself, but setting these realistic goals. And I think practicing too, like, I like article categories in my journal that are only 2,000 word requirements. They give me some practice. So I love, like, writing a commentary, especially if I'm struggling with a problem. I am an extroverted person. I like to think out loud, and writing helps me do that and solve problems that I'm facing with my curricula or just with my leadership or whatever it is. Writing about it really is very therapeutic for me. And that can be very motivating. So I'm motivated to do that because I know that personally it's helping me, but I do have to carve out that time. Is there a time that you think you're most productive when it comes to writing?
Yeah, I know mine is right the first thing at the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
Hopefully the better.
Yes.
So carving out that time, but picking one project. I think sometimes it's easy to get overwhelmed with all the projects. I used to keep this running list on my desk, and of like, here's all the projects I want to do. And I always just felt defeated that I wasn't doing all those projects. So I just stopped doing that. And I just think of, like, what's the one project I want to work on right now? And what am I most passionate about?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, we thank you so much for your time, Melissa. Are there any other questions? I really appreciate that. And if it's okay, we'll share your slides. We really appreciate the ability to record this and share it with all of our participants who are not able to be with us today. And I'm sure you will likely hear from us. And we are always happy to share anything that we have here that's useful, like our IRB.
Yes, your IRB is incredible. Well, just thank you so sincerely for the invitation. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be with you in person, but hopefully in the future I can come and see all of you.
Absolutely. We will extend some invitations. We have some spring events we would love to have you join us for.
Okay, well, best wishes to all of you on this journey. Collaborate with each other, support each other. That'll make it easier. Good luck.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye. Let me see. Hang on, sorry.